Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a great pleasure to be here talking with you and sharing ideas on competitions and exams, how to prepare, some practice ideas and some musical aspects to focus on. I always enjoy sharing ideas and hearing your comments and questions as well. So let's get right into it. If you just bear with me a couple of seconds, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get into a PowerPoint presentation because I feel that's the clearest way to express and make my points. I'm also going to be playing some video clips with me demonstrating how to practice from the piano. So just bear with me. Let's see if I can get rid of this. Okay. So competitions and exams, how to prepare. So welcome. So tonight you're going to hear, first of all, I am going to give a bird's eye view of practice. I'm just going to get a view here. I can't do that. So I'm just bear with me. I'm just trying to do this. Okay, so first of all, you're going to get a bird's eye view of practice and what our intentions are when we practice. Then we're going to go on to the meat of the presentation tonight, which is the 3 essential musical aspects that I believe are really, really important to focus on to perform your best or to get the best result. Then we're going to go on with practical tips and strategies on how to actually practice these musical aspects. And I'm going to be playing some video clips with me demonstrating at the piano to give you as practical tips as possible. And then we're going to have time for a Q&A. So feel free to put your questions in the chat box at any point. And I'll stop halfway and just have a check of that. Okay, can I just request that everybody mute just so that we don't get too much background noise? I'll just double check. Okay, great. That's all right. Okay, so overview of practice. I've put this in because I think it's very, very important to have a goal when you practice. And for this webinar tonight, I believe that the goal that you need to have in practice, it's certainly one that I have. You actually have to have a goal and say, I am actually going to practice in detail. I'm actually going to practice the details. And in the webinar tonight, I'm going to show you what details I'm recommending. But if we actually set out and have a goal and make that intention, we're using very specific language. And the more specific language we use for ourselves, the more chance we're going to do actually what we set out to do. Because I know myself as a performer, you know, any excuse not to sweat the hard stuff, you know, it's very easy to procrastinate. So have a goal to actually practice in detail. And so why do the details matter? Well, the way I would express it is that you need to express what's in the score. We're very, very fortunate in the classical music world to have such fabulous music and genius composers. And they knew exactly what they were doing, and all the information is in the score. So it's really our job to express as much as possible of that. And so we have to discover it. And so once we express the details in the score, express what's in the score, what happens? Well, it's my belief and my experience that the more you express the details and more you actually express the score, the music, the more you express of yourself. And this is a real positive, I believe, for the world and everybody around us. And, you know, also we keep the audience interested. We keep them engaged. I mean, have you ever been to a concert where you felt, oh, this is really going on a bit long, or, you know, everything sounds the same? And we tend as an audience then to become disengaged. So the details do allow you to express more of yourself and really do keep the audience interested. So I just wanted to talk to you a bit about, give you a context about the aspects, the musical aspects I'm going to talk about tonight. We have the basic musical aspects, which is the notes, the fingering, getting the right notes, getting the right basic rhythms. Now, for what I'm talking about tonight, I'm assuming that the notes, the fingering, and the basic rhythms are there. They're already in place in general. If you have got some complicated rhythms, it doesn't matter. You can leave those bars out. But basically, everything is there. And what I call this, to be as systematic as possible, is to call this the basic foundation number one. And it's foundation number two that we're going to be focusing on tonight. Now, that's the three musical aspects that I'm going to get to right away. And I call that foundation two. Now, I've used the word foundation because it is so vitally important to have a strong base, this is just so important. And basically everything I'm talking about, and this is really a step-by-step system that I've put together, and it really originated from my own work and my own performing on stage, always looking for how can I express more of the music? How can I communicate more to the audience? How can I become more secure on stage? All these aspects. And this is how I've put it together. And when we have foundation one and foundation two, the notes, fingering, basic rhythms, and these three musical aspects, we make the music sing. It's fantastic. Everybody's a winner. Everybody's a winner. So let's get to the first aspect. Now, the musical aspect number one that I believe is so important is a consistent pulse. And I'd be interested to hear also from the teachers here tonight. I believe that pulse is one of the hardest things to teach. As a performer, I think it is one of the most tricky things to maintain, because it's very easy to lose perspective on the concert stage. You know, our heart is going faster than when we're in our lounge room practicing. So it is very easy to lose perspective of pulse. So what is it? How does it relate? How is it different from tempo? Well, basically speaking, it is referring to the larger beat. So, for example, in a 4/4 piece, the pulse may well be in minims. So it's 2 minims per bar rather than 4 crotchets per bar. So pulse refers to the larger beat of the piece. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to be actually demonstrating the practice strategy, but essentially you put the metronome on the larger beat. So for example, in 4/4 you put onto minims. Now, what's really super important is that you may do it from section within sections, like you do the first section, put the metronome on. But it's really also important to actually make sure you maintain the pulse over the sections, from what end of one section into the next. So you actually have to practice with a metronome from end of one section into the next to keep the pulse going across the sections, because that's quite a danger area I found, certainly for myself as well. And so, you know, how much of the piece do I actually practice? I've got, say I'm in 4/4, I've got the metronome on minims, but how much of the piece do I need to work on? Well, not much. You can take, let's say, the first phrase or the first section of a piece, you know, you chunk it down and do it section by section. Now, a really important point here is in the rels and the rits, the rallentandos and the ritardandos, I would highly recommend that you actually keep the pulse over those. So you don't actually slow down when you're practicing pulse. You don't actually slow down in the rits and the rels to start off with. You get a much clearer perspective of the piece as a whole if you don't do the rits and the rels. I've found that out in my own experience. And also another very important point about the practice strategy is that you can be practicing at a slow pulse. Okay, so the piece may be vivace in 3/4, but the pulse may be 1 in a bar. But you don't need to play vivace. You can maintain a consistent pulse at a moderato tempo or an adagio tempo. This is not about playing at tempo to start off with. This is about getting a sense of maintaining a pulse. Now, in the next slide, I'm actually going to play a clip from a video that I made a few months ago. And it demonstrates a practice strategy of just a perfect example of, you know, what you can do yourself. Now, I'm going to play this clip. Now, it's been recorded, obviously, on a different microphone, so you may have to alter your volume. I'm just going to make sure that I'm sharing the sound and everything is, yes, everything looks good. So I'm going to play this now. I may actually just give it a few seconds to settle in, and I may actually pause it halfway and just make sure that the sound is working for you all. So if there's a sound issue, just put it in the chat box, but I'm going to start off now. Here we go. Or on the pulse. I'll just give you a couple of examples of pieces of. Oh yeah, sorry, one thing I did forget to mention, this has been edited in a particular app, so it's got notices, obviously, you know, leave a comment and all that sort of thing. That's not so relevant for tonight. It was just edited in an app which put these notices on it. How that works. So we've got the Haydn violin, these are instrumental pieces today. We've got the Haydn violin concerto, which is the Haydn violin concerto in G major, which is in a 4/4. So if you set the metronome to 4/4, you'd probably have 4 beats in the bar. So it goes 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's actually felt in 2. So you feel it in 2. 1, 2, 2. And the piece flows more. It has a greater sense of flow. I'm just going to stop here and see. You can, oh, sound is good. Okay, thank you very much for that. And so you set your metronome to the minimum beat, and that will help you, then you can keep a consistent pulse, but you set it to the larger beat, and that helps you feel the pulse of the piece. Another example in 3, if we take a triple time, is the Kabalevsky violin concerto, which is in 3/4. 3 beats in a bar, 3 crotchet beats in a bar. And it starts with orchestral introduction. And the beats, thinking of in 3, is actually 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's in 3. But it's actually felt in 1. 1, da, 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 da. And so if you set your metronome to the larger beat and keep that consistent. So pulse is referring to the larger beat and how it helps you phrase, it helps you create character, and it gives you a consistent, helps you express the structure of the piece, many things. So pulse is really very key. So if you would like to... Okay, so we talked about pulse and the practice strategy of setting the metronome to a larger beat. And again, it doesn't have to be fast. Now, the second musical aspect that is absolutely vital is creating contrasts. You must have contrasts. And you, as a performer, we find, especially when we record ourselves, don't we, that actually when we think we're doing a lot of contrast, it's not really coming across as a strong contrast. So we know we have to exaggerate it, and we have to be very clear about our contrasts. So to exaggerate it, we need to be very specific with what we decide to do, because the more specific we are, the more likely we are to do it, and the more likely we are to do it in a way that is communicated to the audience. Because contrasts, why do it? Because it expresses much more of the music, it expresses much more of ourselves, and it keeps the audience engaged. It creates different colors. It's, all sorts of different colors, even within the one phrase, and it doesn't sound to the audience like all the same. If you've ever been to a concert and, you hear a piece, you might say, oh, well, it started really well. It was really interesting at the beginning, but then it didn't really change. It just sounded all the same. So we need to be very aware of what contrasts we're going to make. Now, I'm not just talking about dynamic contrast. I mean, dynamic contrast is the obvious one, and it's really super important. And we have to exaggerate them. But there are also other types of contrasts. In character also. With my own students, and I know some of my own students are here tonight, I always encourage them to actually write the character they're thinking of in the score, and they're very good at that. When they actually do that, their playing really communicates contrast and interest and color and excitement. So character is a really important one. You can change the character. You might say, oh, it could be in articulations. It could be in articulations. The legato may be a calmer character. You might have a villain character, and that might be staccato or tremolo, that type of thing. And then you have a gentler character, with a softer dynamic and legato. But if you have a clarity about this and actually write it in the score, I write a lot in my scores, because as an accompanist, I am able to use the music because we play so much repertoire. But I actually write all this in the score and am reading it in concert and in performance, whether it be in auditions or exams. And I find it really helps me, and helps me in a security wise as well. It gives me a very definite musical aspect to focus on under the extra pressure of performance. Now, the other thing to contrast is mood and atmosphere. I think actually dynamics and mood and atmosphere may be the easier ones to start off with, because we all know when the mood of music changes. You know, for example, it may go, an obvious place is may go to a minor key, or might go to, if we start in a minor, it may go to a major key. And all these sort of things, you know, have a checklist to have a look at. Have we changed key? Does it sound major now rather than minor? And this is a really, it's a simple place to start, and it's really enough. If you do these things, it is absolutely enough. And it's very exciting to hear the result of it.
Maintain concentration.
So I'll just check the chat. Okay.
Very good.
So, and now I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to play we'll play one more video, and then I might stop briefly to see whether there are any questions. So the next clip I've got is about contrasts and a demonstration of how to practice that. This is crucial. The second thing is contrasts. You must have contrasts, changes of color in your performance. Now, I'm not just talking about changes of dynamic, although that is really, really important. I'm talking about also changes in character. It's important to have a sense of what character you feel, or what the storyline is of the music. And so I'll give you an example here. It is the Beethoven Sonata, Opus 49, number 2. Here. It's quite a simple sonata, and yet it has so much in it. So I'd like to give you an example of thinking it through with changes of color, with changes of character for each motive. So on and so on. So what I was thinking in the music, I'll just show you what I was thinking throughout that. I was thinking one character along here, the conversation goes on a little bit here in the legato section, but there's a change of character here in this line here, and then we have a total change of character here. It's much more, for me, it's much more insistent. It's much more insistent. And I need to think that as I'm playing, much more insistent. And then, of course, the second subject here has a much gentler character, and yet it still carries the insistence that I feel is in this Beethoven sonata. Now, that's my ideas of the character. You can have your own ideas. It doesn't matter what you think, as long as you create a sense within yourself of the characters and think those as you're playing. It's exciting to create these characters in the music and to think those as you're. I'll just stop here to check whether there are any questions. Does anyone have any questions? I'll just check the chat. Please feel free to. No, it looks like all is going well. Fantastic. So we'll go on to the third musical aspect. I'll just go back to sharing my screen. Oh, I see. That was a bit of a silly thing to do, wasn't it? Oh no, it's gone back. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, great. Just get rid of this. Okay, now the third aspect that I'm going to be talking about tonight is phrasing. I really believe that this is often overlooked, and I believe it has enormous value. When I say it's overlooked, I mean it's overlooked from the perspective of actually shining a light on it and saying, you know, where does the long phrase go? Where do these phrases go? Where does it start? Where does it end? Is there an extended ending? Has the phrase ended where I think it has, or is it actually going further? And phrasing is a thing that I do a lot with my own students, and I feel it really enhances it. I'm looking at it from what I'm hearing from my own students, and the result is fantastic in that it gives a complete it expresses so much of the essential structure, and it simplifies the structure. So we as listeners can more readily understand it, more readily understand the music, and therefore we can then emotionally respond. If we're forever trying to understand what's going on, or we're not sure what's going on, that takes our energy as an audience member away from enjoying the music or emotionally responding to the music. So, and it's an element that I use highly myself in my own practice. In fact, I was working on the Hafner Serenade for violin and piano. I'm playing that next week. The Chrysler composition, and I'd recorded the rehearsal, and I was listening back to that, and I could hear occasionally I was chopping the phrase. So I was actually practicing where am I going to aim for, and it really does bring a beautiful flow into the music, finding where you want to aim for. So I feel that it's the easiest way to think of phrasing, because it can be a little esoteric. It can be a rather maybe initially confusing. Just think of it as punctuation, like a sentence in a paragraph, a sentence in a book. And why do we have punctuation? What's the whole point of it? Well, the whole point of it is so that we can actually understand, we can make meaning of it. I mean, if we had words without punctuation, we wouldn't have a clue, actually. And if I was speaking tonight without punctuation, then I don't think no one would be here. It just wouldn't be making any sense. So punctuation is really key for meaning. And if we think of music as if we think of our music and just simply punctuating that, it really helps me, and it seems to help the students that I'm working with. The results are very, very positive and immediate, and it helps us express ourselves, which is what I was talking about, referring to at the beginning. And the more we express ourselves in a positive way, the more the audience is engaged, and the more it's a win-win. So thinking specifically about what punctuations mean what we're essentially looking for in music is the long phrase. We're not looking for the short 4-bar phrase. We're looking for the long phrase, which is often 8 bars, could be 10 bars, could be 12 bars. It could even be longer. So if you feel that, there is a little bit of a resting at the end of 4 bars, then you can call it a comma. And that's merely a breath in the phrase. The phrase still keeps going, but it's just like a comma. And then the full stop is at the end of the long phrase. I think this is one of the easiest ways to look at it and to analyze and work out where your phrases go. There's actually no right or wrong answer, I believe, in phrasing. As long as you have a long phrase and you commit to going through that long phrase, I believe it has high value and has high impact, high positive impact. And the easiest way to find, I believe, is to find the full stop, the end of the long phrase, is, does it sound finished here? Is there a sense of ending, albeit temporary? We go on to another idea, but does it sound finished? And one way to look at it, of course, is to look for a perfect cadence, a 5-to-1 cadence. But don't worry if you don't, you're not in that language or understand that language or know how to look for one. It just use the scenario. Does it sound finished? Does it sound finished? And if you believe it sounds finished, then your long phrase will go to that point. And then you simply do that and go on to the next phrase and find out where you feel that sounds finished, and you mark it in. And the really remarkable thing about this is in a whole piece or a whole movement of a sonata, you will find very few long phrases. There won't be 30 long phrases. There will probably be under 10. And so it really does help you as a performer take the piece or the movement as a whole, like in one bite. And it really does feed off in many, many respects. It gives us as performers security. It gives us security and confidence in our understanding. And in the added pressure of performance, or the new atmosphere of performance, it gives us somewhere to go. Once we start, we know where we're going. And that is really, really very important, to have a destination in mind. Very, very helpful. So I'm now just going to play another short clip. This is, yes, a Mozart sonata, and one where I play thinking of a long phrase, and then I repeat it again, not thinking of the long phrase, and you can make up your mind if it sounds significantly different. Wait a minute. Here we go. That the author was trying to convey. And it's the same with music. You need to express the phrases so that the audience can understand it, and that you can communicate what you want to communicate through the music. So I'll just give you an example here. The Mozart F major. And the first sentence, the first phrase, actually goes to that place. Now, if you don't play it in phrases, this is what happens. It sounds really disjointed. It's very hard to keep a consistent pulse. And it's not saying anything. So you have to, and the way you do it is you need to sing the tune in your head and hold the tune for the whole phrase. Sing, left hand, right hand, all the way through. And then we have. So basically, I'm talking about singing the melody line through to help you express the long phrase. That's one way. And also another helpful hint that I've discovered myself through my own experience and is to sing through the rests. Make sure you sing the note through the rests so that it carries, you then have a connection from one note through the rest to the next note. Otherwise, you will get a disjoint in the on the rest, and we don't want that. We want to hear the rest, but we don't want a disconnect. So there are three musical aspects to focus on. So I'm just going to quickly run through the summary of what we've just heard. And then I've got a clip, just a very brief clip of me demonstrating all the three aspects in one piece. Okay, so how you bring it all together. But you do practice these aspects separately, one at a time. So we talked about making the intention, the goal. Yes, I'm going to set out and I'm actually going to practice this detail. I'm going to practice pulse today. I'm going to practice contrasts. I'm going to focus on the contrasts of dynamics. I'm going to focus on the contrasts of mood and atmosphere. You make one aspect for, say, one practice session. And it does give you direction. It gives you motivation. I've tried it myself. So the three essential aspects that we're talking about is pulse, focusing on the bigger beat, having your metronome on the bigger beat. Contrasts in character, mood, and dynamics, all looked at in a separate way. And phrasing. And simply think of the punctuation in the music. I do believe that's a really good starting point. And does it sound finished? And as I say, it doesn't matter where you have the ending. If your phrasing is different from somebody else's, that doesn't matter, as long as you have an idea of where you're going. So I'm just, this is the final clip, and I'm just going to, it's a short one, and it's one where I aim to bring all those aspects into one section of the music. And you can hear that the clips tonight are on short sections, and that's exactly how to practice. You just chunk it down. You take a small section of the music. I'm now going to illustrate with a Mozart sonata, the very popular C major sonata. So we need a constant pulse, even pulse. So what does that even pulse mean? Even pulse, this is in 4/4. But you don't think of the pulse as 1, 2, 3, 4. You think of the pulse as 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now here, be careful. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's all one phrase. So we've got an even pulse. We have got one phrase, which means one sentence, a single thought, but it has a little bit of variation in the rhythms, but you must keep the pulse. So you practice with a metronome on 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you set your metronome to the pulse. Then you need contrast. You need changes. You need to change the character. You need to change the mood to engage the audience. So, for example, at the end of the first phrase, now we have something completely different. Now again, different. And you need to change this up within the same pulse. So we finish the first phrase. Keep the same pulse. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. Now 1, 2, 1, 2. And that sort of thing. Okay, so we're now going to go to, that really ends the meat of the webinar. And I'm now going to go to questions shortly. But if any of this material has resonated with you, if you feel a connection with this, you can, I'll just tell you a couple of ways that you can continue it. I've got a couple of courses coming up. If I may just quickly go through this, I've just got an online course for general knowledge for grade 8, anyone doing grade 8 exam, certificate of performance, AMusA and Licentiate. I'm going to do workshops live on Zoom, three sessions, and be plenty of time to ask questions and do some research. It's going to be three sessions, and that's $180, and that's starting on Sunday the 27th of April. It's going to be small groups. The other way you can continue is individual coaching with me, and I take you through the aspects that we spoke about tonight and apply them specifically to your exam pieces or competition pieces. And you can contact me on my website, on email. I'm also on the Xiaohongshu app, the Little Red Book app, where there are plenty of my videos, all free content there. So let's